Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you on board USS Focal Point for a fresh week of patrolling the choppy waters of America's public life, looking relentlessly for the coordinates where truth intersects with politics. Just to close the loop on what's going on in California, this advisory committee saying, look, we think the policy ought to be if you're affiliated with the Boy Scouts, because they will not allow pedophiles to serve as scout leaders or potential pedophiles, because we know that homosexuals, adult homosexuals, molest children at 10 times the rate of heterosexuals. So if you are affiliated with the Boy Scouts because they want to protect the sexual integrity of young boys, you can't be a judge in California. We think that ought to be a disqualifier for you. If you're concerned about protecting the sexual integrity of teenagers to the point where you don't want homosexuals serving as role models or providing leadership for them, then you will be no longer eligible to serve as a judge in the California judicial system. And you think just for a moment about all of the California Supreme Court, what it ought to be about is protecting constitutional rights. Am I right? I mean, this is what a Supreme Court ought to be about. And a Supreme Court ought to be supremely concerned with protecting your basic First Amendment rights. Now think of the First Amendment rights that they would be violating by instituting this policy, the First Amendment rights of judges themselves. If a judge exercises his right to the free exercise of a religion that rejects homosexuality, he's disqualified. If he exercises his freedom of speech by mentioning the health risks of homosexuality, disqualified. I got a story in a stack today, by the way, out of Southern Illinois. They've got a spike in HIV cases in Southern Illinois. Associated Press story read all the way through, and it's especially among young people. That's where the real concern is, young black males in particular, not a mention of the word homosexuality or men having sex with men. I mean, they're avoiding that topic like the plague, but that's exactly the reason for this spike in HIV/AIDS cases. It's primarily found in men who have sex with men. You look at young boys between the ages of 13 and 24 who've been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, 95% of them contracted it through having sex with other men, and it's endemic in the black community. In other words, if you love people in the black community, if you love young males, you want the best for them, then you will be opposed to the normalization of homosexual behavior. It's killing off young guys, especially in the black community. But if in California you are a judge or a judicial candidate and you exercise your freedom of speech to point out the health risks of homosexual behavior, you're disqualified from being a judge. You exercise your freedom of the press by writing about the importance of man-woman marriage for the nurture of children, disqualified. Exercise freedom of association by hanging out with an organization that wants sexually normal leaders, disqualified. You talk about invidious discrimination. This would be it, coming from the very, very top. Now, as I mentioned, this is an advisory committee, so I don't know who makes this decision, but they can always make the right decision here, and here's hoping that they do. Number to call if you want to join the program is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's grab clip number one. Rob, you're familiar with Ed Schultz, and I was actually looking for something else on the Ed Schultz program. He's got a program on MSNBC, and I came across this where Ed Schultz went after me. This was actually last month, back in March. Some of you might be familiar with the cable program Mad Men. I don't know what cable network it's on, but it's a drama that's set in the 1960s, and it's set in the advertising industry. So roles are fairly conventional there, fairly traditional, and all that kind of thing. The outfits are all 60s. The cars are all 60s. The decor is 60s. The furniture is 60s. I mean, they made a major effort to be authentic in the kind of ambiance and atmosphere that they created. So Ed Schultz came across the time when I had talked about the fact when I was a pastor, when I was a senior pastor, I discriminated on the basis of gender, flatly, openly, unapologetically, and proudly, because I wanted a woman to be the one that answered the phone. When somebody called our church office, I wanted a woman's voice to be the first voice that they heard, because I believe God has created women with a unique capacity, designed them to be embracing, to be welcoming, to be inviting. I mean, just the picture of a woman with her arms open to welcome you into her world, into her living room, into her kitchen, into her dining room. That is the kind of tone that I wanted people to pick up when they called our church office. So I just said, look, guys, no point even bother to apply. I am flatly, openly, unambiguously, proudly, unapologetically discriminating on the basis of gender in this hiring decision. And I said to the Equal Opportunity Commission, you got a problem with that? You come find me, sue me. Go right ahead. I don't care. Not going to change my mind. So anyway, Ed Schultz picks up on this, and here's clip one. Here's what he had to say about it. Listen to the music with which this little segment starts.
And in Pretenders tonight, design flaw. Brian Fisher, the right-winger, thinks he's starring in his own episode of Mad Men. Fisher says he likes to put women in their place right at the secretary's desk. The conservative radio host says it's all a part of God's design. Discrimination laws are just getting in the way.
I think God has designed women for the primary outlet for their creativity, their energy, their love, their personality to be in making a home for their husbands and children. Are they obligated? Are they commanded, ordered by God to do that? No. But I believe that is God's basic design. That's how we design male and female to work together. When I went to hire a receptionist, when I went to hire a secretary, when I went to hire somebody who was going to answer the phones for a church, and I said, guys, don't bother applying. I absolutely discriminated on the basis of gender. You want to come and sue me? Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, knock yourself out.
I wonder if Mike Rogers' talk show is going to be like that. Anyway, Fisher couldn't be prouder of his backward behavior. Brian Fisher doesn't know how to run for office. He's just running his mouth. If Brian Fisher thinks being godly means being gross, he can keep on pretending.
All right, so that's Ed Schultz and his running commentary, speaking of somebody running his mouth. Now, you are aware, we've talked frequently about the agenda of Planned Parenthood. The number to call, by the way, if you want to join the conversation is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let me mention this before we get into the Margaret Sanger clip, because I've talked about the fact frequently, and this is in peer-reviewed material now, the facts that homosexual adults offend against children at 10 times the rate of heterosexuals. It's not that heterosexuals don't molest children. We've never said that. But there's an alarming difference in the rate. So there's something dysfunctional, there's something pathological about the homosexual lifestyle all by itself. And one of the ways that pathology expresses itself is in sexual misconduct toward children. Now, I don't know if you saw this story. Here's New York Daily News. There's a director, the director of the X-Men movies. His name is Bryan Singer. And it turns out that he has regularly, routinely in Hollywood hosted these huge parties where he invites all of his Hollywood buddies, his older adult Hollywood buddies, and then they invite all these 15 to 17-year-old males over to his mansion or somebody else's mansion. Doesn't want them in his home, so he rents a mansion, brings them all in there, plies them with drinks and drugs, and they all get into the swimming pool. And then what you would expect would happen in a circumstance like that typically happens. Now, one of his victims, who was 15 at the time, is now suing him for this. But the point here is this kind of conduct, this kind of behavior was routine in Hollywood. Now, we've talked often about Planned Parenthood and its agenda, and we've exposed them repeatedly. They have an anti-black agenda, an anti-minority agenda. They deliberately locate the bulk, 75 to 80% of their clinics, they locate in minority communities because they want to abort Hispanic babies and black babies. And they have the nerve to accuse us of being the racists. We want black babies to live. We want Hispanic babies to live. We believe in the sanctity of every human life. We don't care what the ethnic identity of that baby's parents are. We want life for them. You know, we got this tragic thing going on in New York where more black babies are aborted than are birthed. So more black babies are aborted than are born in New York. We think that's appalling. We think that's horrible. It's genocide. And yet, Margaret Sanger, she was a eugenicist. She was deliberately out to abort black babies. She wanted to exterminate the Negro population. That is a quote from Margaret Sanger. Now, here is a little film clip from 1957. This was filmed at the Dorchester Hotel in London. There's an archival firm in London called British Pathé, and they've uploaded about 85,000 historic films that they've found. It spans 1896 to 1976, and they've uploaded them to YouTube. And somebody came across this little excerpt of an interview that Margaret Sanger had done with somebody from the BBC, apparently, at the Dorchester Hotel in London in 1957 or 1947. Well, I forget which now. But listen to Margaret Sanger, and you talk about an anti-human being, anti-baby agenda. This is what you're about to hear. This is Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood.
This is Margaret Slee, president of America's Planned Parenthood Federation, maintains that European women should stop having babies for the next 10 years.
Don't you think such a theory, such a radical theory, is antisocial?
On the contrary, it seems to me that it is more practical and humane.
What about the women who want babies now and in 10 years will not be able to have babies? Rather impracticable, don't you think?
Oh, John, you do ask hard questions. I should think that instead of being impractical, it is really very practical and intelligent and humane.
But Mrs. Slee, in this country, having babies is the only thing left which is both unrationed and untaxed. Do you think we really ought to stop?
Well, I suppose a subject like that is really so personal that it's entirely up to the parents to decide. But from my view, I believe that there should be no more babies.
So that's Margaret Sanger. From my view, I believe there should be no more babies. So that's the purpose, the function, the goal of Planned Parenthood. It's really not Planned Parenthood. It's planned genocide is what it is. It's planned genocide against the minority community. You know, I told you this story. I helped to break this story in Idaho. There's a Planned Parenthood in the city of Boise. And an activist group headed by Lila Rose had somebody call them and offer a special gift to Planned Parenthood Boise as long as it would be used to abort a black baby. Planned Parenthood was so excited it was like Christmas had come early. Not Planned Parenthood, planned genocide. Focal Point, AFR Talk. We'll be right back.